Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Revolution. It's been quite a week. Give everybody a few minutes to jump on here, but oh man, I don't know about you guys, but I am tired of the news. Anybody else tired of watching the what's next on the news? It's uh, it's tough, especially with so many ideas and opinions out there. I'll tell you, I was very very proud of Bishop Budd, and I didn't realize it was going to be such a dividing thing. To be honest with you, I mean, I would have been glad if she had said the same thing to Joe Biden about our work in Israel, but it seemed that people don't like it when you talk to their favorite politicians in a way that makes them uncomfortable, I guess. But I always think truth to power is quite important and quite vital. I have been very optimistic about the future to the point of maybe too much. I've been trying to be optimistic, but I'm not feeling a lot of optimism right now. Seeing a lot of reasons to be concerned about things that are happening in our country and with our government. As you know, that it's hard to talk about that, especially when you're trying to bring together a community where we really are hoping to argue well and disagree well. And I just got a message. Someone just put something up about what ICE is doing. Part of what today is, I'm not feeling optimistic anymore either, Joel. I just said I was hoping to be optimistic. Trying to live in the benefit of the doubt. I guess of my years of trying to study folks like Dr. King and John Hume and things like that, and studying the Bibles and things like that, is this idea is I always, there's that, it's like the two kind of lives that are happening inside of you. Part of you feels like this human fear, but then the other part of you is like, well, I've got to give grace. I can't preemptively judge. Even, I keep seeing these red flags, but I have conversations with other people who seem kind of hopeful, so I'm just going to try to see what happens here. And we're in a bad place now. Also, I don't like scapegoating, as you know. So for me, I've spent the past 4 years, and some of you have not been very happy with me, where I've spoken out against some of the stuff that the Biden administration had been doing as well, and especially their support of what was the bombs and the money and our taxes going to Gaza. So anyway, I mean, I even had some of you tell me, I had one of you tell me that why don't you just go ahead and vote for Donald Trump because you're so anti. And I've never been anti. I believe that we've got to critique our leaders and critique the powers that be. And I often seen people only critique the leaders they don't, or that are not members of their party. And that's just not how I am. I just feel like, actually, I feel like I should probably keep my party more accountable than anything, because if that's a party I'm a part of, often people don't find that uplifting or great. But that's just, I think, my call as a leader and where I'm at. I want to, I'm just going to jump into the talk today. And I'm using a lot of different of my heroes and folks and people and things like that. But I do think we're in a scary place right now. A lot of people, a lot of my LGBTQ friends are feeling extremely stressed out, extremely worried. A lot of my Hispanic friends as well. it's a nervous, it's a really strange time in the United States. And I don't think we've ever been here. I mean, I remember when if a president signed in a bill or two, it would make the news. I've never seen so many bills and so many executive orders. Executive orders used to make news, and now it's every day. But I want to say that I think compassion and mercy should always be bipartisan. I think compassion and mercy should always be willing to be asked of anyone in leadership, and should always be something we ask from our leadership. Should always be something that we continue to remind our leadership that we need, even for those of us who are enemies, especially if you're a follower of Jesus and you believe in grace and you believe in forgiveness and you believe in mercy, then compassion has always got to be a part of that. We don't usually often talk about the differences of what it is to be a Christian, but a Christian is to love and love your enemies and love those who persecute you. I mean, those are the truths of Christianity. So asking a leader to show compassion, asking a leader to show mercy, even if you have a history of being a liberal and so you're speaking to a conservative, or if you've been a conservative and you're speaking to a liberal, I think is something that should always be practiced. I have had some very horrific things and horrible, rude, crazy things said to me online over these past few days because I really did expect people to think that that Bishop's Bud, who I've known for, I met her years and years ago, but I've known her on and off. We've been at different events together. I thought what she said was excellent, and it's so surprising to me how folks seem so loyal to politicians and to their president that they think he is above reproach. But no man is above reproach. We've been going through Galatians, in which we're taking a slight break from today, but when the Apostle Paul talks about Peter and James and John as the pillars of the community, he says, but what they really were makes no difference. Like, God shows no favor. No one is above reproach. No one is above, and I didn't even think it was reproach as much as it was just, asking for mercy. The clear thing is that as preachers and teachers and ministers, we do hear people's fears. People do reach out to us and share those things with us. And it's like we're saying, hey, we know people are frightened. We're just asking for humanity. To be honest with you, her talk made me feel less crazy because I thought, wow, am I, sometimes you think, am I overblowing this stuff? And you realize you're not. But compassion and mercy should always be something that we're willing to practice. And you need to take a better look at your politics if you don't think your politicians or your leaders if you think they're above being called to show mercy and compassion. I think you need to take a deeper look at yourself and ask yourself, where do my loyalties lie? Do my loyalties lie with politicians, or do my loyalties lie with humanity and people, and the least of these? We're more divided than we've ever been in a long time, and this is a political divide. This is this isn't a religious divide right now. Of course, religions and Christians are more divided than ever. I mean, most of the people who are very upset with me this week have been Christians and conservative Christians. It's been a long time since conservative Christians have been so angry at me. I think the last time was like 2005 through about 2010 for my support of my LGBTQ brothers and sisters. But it's been a long time. I had thought people had forgotten about me, but you just post the right thing and people, I felt like I woke, he's still here. As always, I hope we can get beyond this, but that's what we're going to be talking about today. And this is not going to be easy work. This is not going to be easy for you. This is not going to be easy for me. This is not going to be easy for any of us. And we're going to have to really practice something that I learned in dialectic behavior therapy. It's something called radical acceptance. It's finding that we have to accept the story that we find ourselves in. That does not mean that we don't do anything about it. That does not mean we try to make things better, but that it helps us accept where we're at and maybe takes off a little bit of that constant, if you're like me, a little OCD, constantly thinking dread and things like that, and you just go, this is where we're at. And it's silly because I've used radical acceptance for all sorts of things, like for moving. Like I moved a lot as a kid, and it was kind of traumatic. So when I move now, it's, I'm like, I'm all over the place, and it really wears on my mind. And I really tried my best to practice that like radical acceptance. My last move, I actually did completely all by myself, and I kind of had to keep just going like, this is where it's at, this is where I'm at in life, and this is what we're going to do. Might sound strange, but it's like in the 12-step program where they say one day at a time, or think through a drink and all these little things, and then when you actually do it, you go, oh wow, that really helped. So there's just some things that I think can help us move forward. I hope we can get beyond this time. I hope we can find common ground. Maybe finding common ground, and this is what I really believe and what I really hope for, but it's funny because I've had pushback. Now this I did mention, because I started to get a lot of kickback, especially on my Facebook page. So I said, well, here's the vision, here's the hope, here's the common ground. And it was really funny, like the hope for common ground got pushed back by both sides. And I will tell you, that's the most exhausting thing, is when you have like liberals going like, like no, and right people going, no, and you're like, hey, why are you all beating up, why are y'all pushing back so hard on me? And it starts to feel like, oh, well, I mean, maybe nobody really wants change. I mean, they say they do, but maybe unconsciously they're setting themselves up to not really want change, and just want to, maybe that we're repeating processes of arguing and dissent and discord with each other. Maybe there's sometimes unconsciously we defeat ourselves. We repeat bad habits. I had one where I was constantly kind of getting myself humiliated by certain people in my life and certain things, and I realized that it was an unconscious thing that I was doing. And when I talked to an analyst, I realized that and was able to put an end to that. So unconscious is a pretty powerful thing, and often we fall into that. But I'm thinking maybe a basic human needs could bring us together, because honestly, I don't believe religion's going to do that. It doesn't seem like religion's going to do that. Religion honestly seems to be failing us right now in a lot of ways. Even though I'm grateful and very excited about Reverend Buddy speaking up and doing that, because I think that's what Dr. King would have done. I think that's what Jesus would have done. I think that's what Paul, but I think they would have done the same thing to any politician, and especially to leaders of America. To me, it's like this is a no-brainer. Someone should have said this to both of them. But religion doesn't seem to be a great bringing moment together. And I even mean like religion in the sense of real religion, true religion. Like even it seems like our Christianity is just not doing the work. And so I think at the heart of Christianity is that seeking for humanity and seeing each other's humanity. And I think that will work. And I'm going to share that with you guys today. So at this point, I'm just saying it doesn't even feel like religion is very helpful. I've been called a heretic. I've been told I'm going to hell the past few days. I have had old friends completely just tell me that I am a piece of shit and that all I'm doing is trying to cause trouble, and I'm just trying to get views and money. I mean, I've been really surprised of the cruelty of people, but I also know that we're all in a really insecure time. And in some ways, when I see people acting like that, I realize it's almost the defense mechanism has gone up so strong, is that they know that maybe they're in a place that's not the best place. Maybe they're defending something that's really not worth defending. And often when we find ourselves in that, we can either repent and turn around and go, oh, I made a mistake, or we can, double down. And I feel like a lot of people I've cared about are doubling down towards me. And I'd rather be it towards me than other people. I feel like I can handle a little bit more. As you all know, Martin Luther King, one of my very favorite human beings, saw the need for us to come together. So did another one of my favorite human beings, who I'm going to be in Belfast next. I got a ticket to go to Belfast 4 years ago, and it fell through. And I've been sitting on this flight voucher to go to back to Northern Ireland, and I haven't been able to use. And also because the flight people weren't in Seattle for a long time, but they're back, and so I'm next month going to go, and then I'm going to do a whole thing on John Hume when I'm in Northern Ireland. So I'm really excited about that, and hopefully I'll have a picture of John Hume somewhere behind me as well after I get back from that trip. MLK saw the need for us to come together, and so did people like John Hume. They knew, and great other civil rights leaders as well. They knew that it was the only way, and that violence was for them not an option. And for me, continue to see violence as not an option, but I can see it as a great temptation. I can see when those things happen, but for me, I will continue to practice nonviolence and work with folks and encourage them to do that. Now, John Hume is funny because he also had won the Nobel Peace Prize. He's very Northern Irish. He's not like the most, he was very different than Dr. King because he wasn't the most riveting speaker. It didn't seem like the most riveting person. He seemed like a guy that was just caught up in something and knew that something had to change. And he's like, I'm going to be a part of this change. And he wasn't very dynamic, but he won the Nobel Peace Prize. He won the Dr. King Peace Prize. He won the Mahatma Gandhi Peace Prize as well. He's the only one to ever receive all three peace prizes. And this might give you an idea. This is one thing he said. This is one of his quotes. This might give you an idea why he wasn't as charismatic as others. But so I'm going to give you a quote. And he goes, "When people are divided, the only solution is agreement." I mean, I could tell you what, if I put that up on Facebook right now, you would just watch people there would be a meltdown. There would be a complete meltdown on my page. I have quite a diverse group of people who follow me and I'm grateful for that. But sometimes it can be a little bit tough to navigate on my own. Especially when everybody's got, I've got dyslexia, so I'm trying to spell things right, and you're trying to they land, and sometimes your comments aren't going after what they've said, so you're like, am I commenting to the right person? I mean, you don't want to rebuke somebody who's just, who's just trying to be like, I love you, and you're like, I don't. It happens. But again, I'm going to repeat this again. What John Hume said, the depths of John Hume. When people are divided, the only solution is agreement. Now you might say, oh, wow, that sounds naive. But here's a man who made that happen, okay, within his work and within his passion, and by bringing divided people together. That's why we're reading the book of Galatians right now. That's why it's Paul's greatest book on grace, and it's a book of him trying to bring a divided city of people together. We see, and you see him you see the Apostle Paul tell Peter, what are you doing? Why are you not eating with these people? He rebukes him in front of the public, and we don't write off Peter or Paul because of that. That's what I'm so surprised that Christians are so shocked that a Christian would say, you need to show mercy. And they're like, how dare that liberal woman try to do, it's like, I just don't understand it. I don't get it. Maybe we're just also frustrated with politics. We don't trust anybody anymore when it comes to that. It shows that we're in a really bad place, and we all maybe need to rethink about how our political system works. Now, he said these simple words, and he accomplished this, but it only took 30 years. But there's truth to what he's saying. And the fact that it took 30 years is the idea of this: when people are divided, the only situation is agreement, is to get people to agree, to get people to come together, to get people to say, we have to solve this problem together. Took him 30 years. And it took him working with lots of very amazing human beings to get to that point. Dr. King working with people to try to say, how can we get together? How can we get to agreement? I mean, he would have to meet with these politicians because he was trying to get them to agree that his black brothers and sisters had the right to eat at a table, had the right to vote, to do these things, but he was trying to get the powers that be, who did not see that, to agree with him so they could move forward. And often that would come through civil disobedience, harsh words, marches, Dr. King and his folks going to prison. It was hard work. It wasn't something that was quite easy, but eventually they found the people willing to make the agreement, even if it was pressure put on by the world, because the world saw the hoses, the fire hoses and the dogs being put onto these people, and said, this isn't how humanity. So it took radical movements to get people to agree, what have we become? This is not humanity. Humans don't deserve this, no matter what the color of their skin is, no matter what their politics are. This is not humane. And so it's a lot of work to get us to a place to get us to that agreement. So this is what I'm saying. We are so divided that we're going to have to start to do work and realize that the solution to this is agreement. And I don't think any of us are going to have the chance to go talk to our leaders, but we do have a chance to talk to our brothers and sisters that we're divided with, our fellow human beings. I'm going to read from one of my other favorite books that I think should be canonized and put in the Bible, is Martin Luther King's book, A Letter from a Birmingham Jail. I want to look at what Dr. King has to say here. As you can see, he was a bit more of a auditor, a bit more of a talented speaker. But in his, he goes, in the letter from a Birmingham jail, he says, we are caught up in an inescapable network of mutuality. We're inescapable. Our mutuality is inescapable. Tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live in a narrow, provincial outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds. Did you hear that? He said, anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds. But we often, based on our politics, will decide who the outsider is. Often communities are built on having a mutual outsider. Who is the outsider? So here we are. Dr. King says we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, and we're always going to affect one another. This also means my trans brothers and sisters should have the same rights as my conservative evangelical brothers and sisters, if we really want true equality. To see special laws put in and say, well, we're only going to recognize this, and so we're going to get rid of these people. That is not, we will be caught up within that. Matter of fact, I will say that these laws that our current leader, our president, is setting into things concerning transgender human beings in this world is going to wake up a sleeping dragon, and it's going to cause more conflict, and it's going to cause more people to speak up. I've done a lot of advocacy work for the LGBTQ community over my lifetime, but over the past few years, I've just been silent. Not silent because in a bad way, but because I feel like I have lots of LGBTQ brothers and sisters who are leaders and speakers and things like that. And I'm like, you know what? They're out there doing their work. If they need me, they'll let me know. People know where I stand. And now I'm back at a point where going, okay, straight white ally guy has to come back out and speak up on the behalf, because equality is for us all. Now, I say that for my transgender brothers and sisters. I mean, if you all know Lawrence Richardson, he has been such a huge impact on my life. And we've been caught up in a network of mutuality for years, and his network with my mutuality has really helped my life. I've had other people in that community who were not so favorable of me, but that's just life. We learn to disagree. We have disagreements. We see things like that. But the point is that they deserve to be treated like all other human beings, as long as it's giving other human beings the same equality. So I even have to say that we're going to need equality for our Mark Driscoll people and our conservative Christians. They deserve it too. It's when we fall into folly is when we start to try to to put into law and pass bills that cause other people not to have the same equality that we do. That's when we run into problems. I think free speech is great and fine and all that, and it protects usually the speech that I don't want to hear, right? But the fact is if we want to be in a world, in a country that's truly equal, then we must be fighting for each other's equality, not trying to discourage it and scapegoat one another in order to be somehow righteous or something. That's just not how it works. And we must see no one as an outsider. You know, even people here who are illegally, you know. It's so crazy to me how much we buy into what our politicians say, and we're not able to see the bigger picture of going like, yeah, that's a group, there's bad people, but there's bad people in every group. There's bad people in liberal groups, there's bad people in conservative groups, there's bad people in every identity that there's out there, and there's good people. You know, that is just the reality of being a human being, and it is just so wild to me how we get caught up into this political way of thinking and start to scapegoat people and create our own prejudice, and then we become heterosexist, or we become racist, or we become anti, certain religions. I'm sure there's a word for it. I don't have it. But we're not to see anyone as an outsider. And that's, even when people see you as an outsider, I would strongly say do not let them pull you down enough to make you see them as an outsider. As Dr. King said, do not allow someone to pull you down enough to hate them. Because hate begets hate. Outside of that, all this language starts to it creates this kind of just cycle that doesn't change anything. We just continue fighting. And I feel sometimes often that we just get so comfortable within that cycle that we're afraid to get out of it. I mean, I've seen some people, I see a lot of pastors and a lot of speakers and a lot of people who have podcasts and things, that cycle is how they make their money. How they finance their life is like as if they've got an enemy and they've got outsiders, and then those people create outsiders, and then those other people they've been created outsiders by them start podcasts, and then it's a cycle, and it's their financial cycle, and now all of a sudden their living is based on the fact that we all continue to fight and continue to be divided, and we must be very weary of that. And so that's why sometimes, we'll have inside agitators. We hear about outside agitators. We'll have inside agitators who go, gosh, if this conflict stops, what am I going to do with my life? So you have to ask yourself, am I part of that cycle? Or are there parts of me that stay and live within that cycle? One of the things that Dr. King also said was this, is there comes a time when our cup of endurance runs over. He said this about the African American community. There just comes a time, because there were a group of people in Birmingham, a group of ministers said, oh, can't you just wait a little longer? And he's saying, we can't endure anymore. And I don't think it's right for us to ask our LGBTQ brothers and sisters to endure anymore. I don't think it's right to ask, the outsiders to endure. I don't think it's right to ask the poor to endure anymore. The poor have endured enough. And the cup is running over. So many cups are running over at this time in our country. And I think we have to realize that, so that we may have to make sure that we're not asking our brothers and sisters who are going through hell to endure more hell. And we have to help our friends, even our evangelical brothers and sisters, say, well, don't want to. Going like, listen, they can't endure any more of your judgment. So if they fight back, you should expect, because they're running out of endurance. It happens. And I think that's why the word ally comes in with human beings. I mean, I think it's just being a fellow human being, but we have words for that. Is because we come in and we go, yeah, we have to support these folks because they don't deserve to endure this anymore. I really thought, that a lot of this stuff was behind us when we saw marriage equality become a reality. and a lot of more gay rights start to happen. And now it seems to be that, there's some steps being made backwards. And I would really have liked to stayed out of that, but I cannot, because it's just, I believe in justice for all, really for all. I mean, that's why I said, I think, Mark Driscoll has the right to run his church and say the things that I don't like he says. But it's when these folks start to try to make these into laws is when we have a problem. And I think if we could just have the discussion and the conversation and to sit down and agree that we're not going to try to make it illegal to be one's enemy or to disagree or to have a different type of life or a different type of lifestyle, if that's what they want to, that's what they call it, whatever. Anyway, let's move on. I know many of you out there have been I know many of you are there. I've been in contact with your cup running over, because I've been in contact over the past few days and seen folks who are at the end of their rope. People who are scared. People reaching out to me through direct messages. I've been getting text messages, getting calls. I've not heard from so many of you in such a long time, and I'm grateful that you see me as someone that you can reach out to and share your worries and your pains and your concerns, and see me as someone who you feel can be a safe place, also someone who can be an ally and an advocate to help you, and I'm grateful for that. And I mean, at this point, it's just too many to say like, oh, this is just a coincidence. I mean, obviously, I'm watching the same news that, not all the same news. I try to limit myself to certain channels because I don't like the leaning channels on either side. I really want to try to have the pure, and I have people in my life like I go to and be like, hey, am I seeing this right? People I try to work this out with, that I make sure I'm not falling for propaganda, because none of us are beyond that. But I know a lot of you are at your end of your rope. One of the things I hope is that our Republican and conservative brothers and sisters, our MAGA brothers and sisters, if you will, which I'm sure probably some of you feel uncomfortable hearing that, but some of you don't realize is that some of those folks are part of this congregation, because we are a very diverse congregation, to the exact words of diverse thinking. That's why we talk about arguing well and disagreeing well, and we encourage you all underneath to really try to hear each other out and to listen to one another and disagree well, and if your temper gets bad, to just stop typing. What I kind of ask though is, can you brothers and sisters, can you empathize with them? I will say that when I saw that thing that said the sin of empathy, I've never heard anything so insane in my life. I've always been a very empathetic person, to the point where it's almost uncomfortable for my own life. I don't think it's a magical thing. I just think it's when you're so obsessive compulsive, you learn, and you're insecure, you learn to read all sorts of people's tell signs. I just think it's an unconscious thing often. But, are you willing to at least sympathize and empathize with these folks and realize why they're scared, why they're frightened, why we're asking for mercy, why folks are saying, please be kind? When we start to see families ripped apart on the news, it's going to be a whole nother reality of to what it means to, oh, it's not just, illegal people who are selling drugs, but it's also families living in our country. When we see people now entering into our schools and our churches and being dragged out by ICE, the reality will come quickly that maybe there has been a misstep and maybe there's a better way. And I don't think saying well, we'll just let it be lawless and everybody can do whatever they want. But I think by saying, well, we want these people to show compassion, we want people to see mercy, we want to see ways for these in positive, and where people and families are kept together and not in cages, which is a Republican and a Democratic thing. They both love to put people into cages, so we can't scapegoat anybody on that one either. So we have to go we want more of an empathetic, sympathetic way of solving these issues. And that's where Christianity is going to differ from politics and religion. That's where being a follower of Christ is going to be different than being a Republican or a Democrat. That's where we step back and go, these are unjust laws, or this is being done unjustly, or this is being done horrifically. And that's where we have to sit down and say, we have to stand up and speak the truth. And hopefully we can speak that truth with love and compassion, but also with great conviction. Dr. King on unjust laws said this, also in a letter from a Birmingham jail. Let me see if I can find where I put that. I think it's just a couple pages over now. The answer lies in the fact that there are two types of laws, just and unjust. I would be the first to advocate obeying just laws. One has not only a legal but moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. I would agree with St. Augustine that an unjust law is no law at all. Now, what is the difference between the two? How does one determine whether a law is just or unjust? A just law is a man-made code that squares with the moral law or the law of God. An unjust law is a code that is out of harmony with the moral law. To put it in the terms of St. Thomas Aquinas, an unjust law is a human law that is not rooted in eternal law or natural law. Any law that uplifts human personality is just. Any law that degrades humans' personality is unjust. All segregation situations are unjust because segregation distorts the soul and damages the personality. Do you hear that? It gives the segregator a false sense of superiority and the segregated a false sense of inferiority. And so what do you think that we're saying to our LGBTQ brothers and sisters, especially transgender folks right now, is we give them this inferiority complex. We do that also with people who are here illegally. We're giving inferiority complex, but we've got to be doing it and explain the law and why we have these laws in a just and compassionate and caring way that doesn't tear someone's life apart and doesn't make them feel inferior or doesn't make their family suffer more. But they feel that if you use suffering for these people, it'll set an example. That's the idea. But that's not Christianity, and that's not Jesus. And I feel like that's why Martin Luther King said there are just and unjust laws. And we're going to have to ask ourselves continuously, what's the difference? Paul Tillich has said that sin is separation. Is not segregation an existential expression of man's tragic separation and his awful estrangement, his terrible sinfulness? So when we refuse to communicate, when we refuse to have hard conversations, when we refuse to see at least the hope of one day on agreement, we're saying we want the sin of separation. So here we are. When people like John Hume say, when people are divided, the only solution is agreement, he is literally saying the only solution is grace. Because we cannot live in this sin of separation from each other's humanity. I have a copy of the Constitution that I have and the Declaration of Independence. And I want to read something from the Declaration of Independence, which I think we are all familiar with. As it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator a certain undeniable right, that amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I think when we say, hey, maybe you've pursued happiness in an illegal way, we should still say you do have a right to pursue happiness, and let us show you how to do that. But that's in our Constitution. And I'm going to get into Galatians today. Oh, you thought you would get away from Galatians. Nope. No. This is another thing for us to recognize our humanity. It is so wild to me. I remember about 4 years ago, I did this talk on Galatians, and I did this sermon that I did. And a lot of my very progressive friends were really pushing against this what Paul was saying, because they're like, well, I'm this, and this is my identity, and this is that's important to me. But this is why people like Reverend Barber, the great civil rights leader of today, says identity politics is not going to solve any of our issues, our problems, and the governments and these powers that be, the Republicans and the Democrats, use them to keep us divided. And if we stay divided, they win. It's when we all join together and say, you know what? If we just all got together and said we just want to be able to make a living, eat food, and pay our rent, and have jobs that provide us with that. And, if we get sick, we don't go bankrupt and we want insurance, then we just all got together and said that, we would probably get it. But we're never going to get it because they keep us arguing over our identities. And when you stand up for one's particular identity and the other group is against it, well, that identity group, those politicians know that they've got you for good because you stood up for them. And then anybody who times and goes, but they're doing this, it's really hard for you in that group to say, well, they've stood up for me. I can't talk against them. They gave me my rights. Yeah, but they're really hurting the poor, or they're sending all these bombs over and killing all these people in Gaza. And it's really hard for me to go like, but they've been my ally. How do I speak against them? They've been there for me. So that often is how they use identity politics to keep us separated and keep us divided. Yes, Teresa, I definitely will. So let's look at this just for a minute. Galatians 3:28. Here we are again. As many of you, I'm going to go with 27. As many of you were baptized into Christ, have clothed yourselves with Christ. There is no longer Jew or Greek. There is no longer slave or free. There is no longer male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. Now, I don't believe this is for people who are Christians. I think he's saying this as Christians, that we lose our identity in Christ, and that as Christians, we do not see identity, and we do not allow identity to keep us from loving someone's humanity. And what I think this is saying is that we become together and we see one another's humanity. I don't think that means we're colorblind and all the, floofy, weird stuff. But I do think it says is that we come together and we respect one another's humanity. And when we see someone being scapegoated because of their gender or because of their sexuality or because of their race or because of their religion, we go, no. Or because of their status, we go, no, we're all one. We're all human beings, worthy of the pursuit of happiness, worthy of being liberated. We all have to work together and come together as humans. I love that John Hume once said, you can't eat a flag, because he was just thinking like all these people were like raising different flags. No, my flag, mine. And you can't eat that. And humans, we all together have to eat. We have to be nourished. We have to take care of ourselves. We can't live otherwise. But we become so angry over our identities that all of a sudden we can't afford our own food. And no one can. 60% of Americans are living close to being completely impoverished and homeless because they're living paycheck to paycheck at a time. Or we scapegoat men. And I often see a lot of men and people say, well, I talked to this pastor the other day and was saying, asking them about why they hurt someone and excluded someone. And they're like, well, all these men defended this guy and you should have been more women or more of that. And I'm going, do you not realize that men have the highest rate of suicide? Between 40 and 50 men are killing themselves in horrific numbers. It's when we go, well, it's gender or it's this or it's that, and we buy into these ideas or we do give these blanket ideas of somehow one gender or group acts or one this, we miss out on their suffering, and then people suffer and die, and we just continue to judge them, and we might be that straw that breaks their back. We might do that with the LGBTQ community. We might do that with the progressive church community. We might do that to the white male conservative. We have to continue to realize and be human beings and be compassionate. And this is why it's called the narrow road, the road less traveled. The broad road isn't this broad road of money and sex and cigarettes and radar movies and nice cars and nice houses, because we all know that all that stuff is ridiculous, and most of that stuff is way without any of our reach. The narrow road is loving those you disagree with. It's seeing all humanity. It's saying there is neither Jew nor Greek. There's neither slave or free. There's neither man or woman. We are all one. This is radical talk. And it's not me. This is the Apostle Paul, but I agree. This is Dr. King. This is John Hume. These are people who have been fighting to bring people together and bring people out of conflict for their whole work. Do you know how long America's been a democracy? Does anybody know how long America's been a democracy? I was reading this the other day and I thought it was really beautiful. America was not really a democracy until the Voting Rights Act in 1965 that allowed all people of color to vote. We can't risk living with people with dangerous ideologies. No, and that's why we have tough conversations with people with bad ideologies. We have to talk to them. We have to be human with them. What are you going to do? Are you going to kill them all? If you can't live with them, then what do? You either kill them or exclude them. I mean, what do you do? Do they not have a right to live as well? People who disagree with you, what do you do to them? You put them in prison? We've seen this done in the history of just this country alone. Do we go to a civil war? So what I'm doing, I'm trying to look for a way of how we solve these issues, how we see a better world. But that comes through tough conversations. That comes from loving your enemy, doing good to those who persecute you, the very words of Jesus. And you might ask yourself, do I really want to follow this? Is Jesus really what I'm going to follow in my life? Or am I going to play the political game? And I think if we continue to play the political game, it's going to keep us in a vicious cycle. And we're never going to see change. And our children and our children's children will be in that same cycle until we destroy one another's lives. Don't worry, we're getting there, folks. We're getting there. Another amazing thing that Dr. King said to me, because he talks to me at night. He's a ghost, comes to me at night. Another thing that Dr. King said, felt like he said it to me. We may have all come in different ships, but we are in the same boat now. And that's where we're at. We're together. You know, we might have come in different ships, but we're all here together now. You know, my kids go to public school, so sometimes they get, you know, different teachers. When they have substitute teachers, they have different politics, different ideas. It's always an adventure, you know. But we're in that same. So how then do we fight for a better tomorrow? That's funny because this is where the talk was going. Let us not pretend that there won't be conflict and there won't be arguing, but we must try to do it well. But it is in no way going to be easy. It will require us to pick up our cross. It will require us to have painful conversations. It should also encourage us to maybe find great therapy if we can afford it, or to find good friends that we can talk to find communities that we could be in and seek love and compassion. Now, also, I know that a lot of you work 9-to-5 jobs. I mean, I work painting apartments and doing that, and I know at the end of the day, my thought isn't, how can I help the world? My job is like, how can I shut the world off and turn on a really good Netflix show and watch it for a few hours and eat something and go to bed? So I know this is a hard talk. I know this is a challenge. You know, I know this is tough stuff to say. But I do hope that today's talk will be more of an encouragement than a discouragement to you all. You know, I do pray that you'll find this to be encouraging. I really want my work to be encouraging. I can't tell you how much I want you to be encouraged and not discouraged. And that will take time. That's why I shared with you that quote of John Hume where he says, when people divided, the only solution is agreement, and then made it very clear that it took him 30 years to get those people to agree. It took him a lifetime. Matter of fact, by the time he got those people to agree, He started to lose his facilities and couldn't remember what he had done, and didn't even realize that he helped bring all of Northern Ireland together and stopped a civil war. Remember, we are not just fighting against our opponents, but we are fighting for our opponents. And I think that's something else to remember, is that we're not just fighting against our opponents. We are fighting for them. We are fighting for them to see something new, to see something different, to no longer be our opponents, to see their own humanity and see the humanity of others, where they realize that it's not their job to keep people from living life. It's not their job from keeping people from the pursuit of happiness. It's not their religion to if they can't convict others, then they need to move on. They don't need to create a bill that's going to make them do what they feel. That's being a dictator. That's not Christianity. That's not, I don't think, Muslim religion. That's not Islam. That's not, we should really encourage this to stay out of the political solution, especially in this country and in countries where we have freedom of speech and freedom of religion. We want to help them become better and feel better and see humanity as deserving, and everyone in humanity, of all humanity, to be deserving of have a life well lived. Always will be nuances. There'll always be things that we have to talk about and make sure each other is safe, and make sure that there's always equality built in, and those are going to be tough conversations. I see a lot of conversations going on. I just remember we try to disagree well, try to show respect, try to show love, and be compassionate and graceful to one another. The comments only come up for a second, so I can't really read them all. This does not happen by blaming or scapegoating people groups. It just doesn't happen. And I see so much scapegoating. There's a progressive liberal friend of mine, and he just thinks that I see him write a lot of stuff, and he just thinks that that the Democrats can do no wrong, and he was talking, about Bishop Buddy, but in a way that was like, she could only have said this to conservatives, And I said, but what? I said, don't act like liberals are innocent. Don't act like the Democrats are innocent. She could have said this very well to Joe Biden, and for his support of war and bombs and all these things. Children being killed by bombs and their bodies being torn to shreds and being dead, and whole families being destroyed. I think they said it was 65% of the kids now live with people who aren't relatives or not their immediate family. So it doesn't happen by scapegoating. So when we have these arguments, when we have these critiques, because I don't think critiques, critiquing people is, if we can do it in a way that's beneficial to others and helping them and changing their lives, is that we have to do it with love and liberation at the heart of it. And if we have love and liberation at the heart of our critiques and the heart of our truth, and that was one of the things that Bishop Budd, I saw, is that hers was with liberation and peace, and with love was at the heart of that. I mean, it's true. People are afraid and scared. That's just the reality we live in, folks. We have to remember that those that we fight with and against and argue with and against are also victims. They are also victims. Our enemies are often also victims, and they are victims of misinformation and propaganda. And they too are scared of losing something that they've been told that if that group does this or this does that, they're going to lose something. They're going to give up something, somehow going to hurt them. And so they have this fear that might be unfounded, but they've been propagandized to believe that. And I don't think it should be our job to have to do that. But once again, this is the boat we find ourselves in. We are all in the same boat now. And it may be us, now it may be up to us. I mean, I really felt very, very strong today that this had to be said. You know me, I never really try to break away from my Galatians talk. That's my big talk every year. That's the big one. But I felt like this is the time, is now, and it has to be said. These things must be said. These are the conversations we must be thinking about. We must wake up to the reality of what's going on and be slow to judge and quick to love and practice our patience. You know, patience is a virtue. Patience is one of the fruits of the Spirit. To practice it and try to listen, but we also need to speak up against injustice. And I hope when we speak up against injustice, it's with the hope of we're speaking up as liberators for all humans, that there is no Republican or Democrat. There is no man or woman. There is no LGBTQ and no straight. We just see each other as human beings, and we feel like we all deserve a life well lived, the pursuit of happiness, to eat and feed each one, to live in a home, to have basic rights. We must not give in to the temptation of hate and the temptation of cruelty. They may feel right and good, but they will not bring change, and they will keep us divided and maybe divide us even more. And like I said, continue that cycle that's never ending. I don't want my kids to have to grow up in a cycle like that. They probably will. I don't think we'll make as much change as we'd like to right now, but that's where we're at. I remind all of us to follow Jesus is quite different than following politicians and your government. You know, because when you follow Jesus, that's when you realize that some laws are just and some laws are unjust, and those unjust laws are worthy of being broken. But you also have to be willing to be put in jail, to face those consequences as well. You know, there's a lot that comes along with disobeying unjust laws. And I say this again, I remind all of us to follow Jesus is quite different than following politicians and governments. And it even may be more important to remember this when it comes to our own party. Often we just take the propaganda from our own party just because it's with a little bit of sugar, because you're like, oh, yeah, they did this, they did that. Inclusion will not be easy, and it will not be without conflict. And I have to tell you, and I've learned this growing up my whole life, is that's part of life. Equality means everyone, and we should not support laws that exclude others, even if we disagree with their life or who they are or certain things or their religion. We should not ever see the justice in creating laws against other human beings' lifestyles or convictions that are not harmful to others. We must continue to remind others and ourselves of our shared humanity. You know, the idea of change is great, right? The idea of change is fantastic. But the work of change is a different story. Loving enemies sounds, it sounds saintly. Like, I love your enemies. You're like, oh, amen, Jesus, love my enemies. You know, and then you go like, oh, but my enemies, this guy, this president, or this person over here. And then all of a sudden it doesn't seem so saintly. It seems saintly to not love your enemies. And then be grateful that Jesus said, love your enemies and not like your enemies. As Dr. King said, you know, I'm glad he said not like them, because it's very hard to like people who kill your brothers and sisters. It's very hard to like people who firebomb your home, your family's home. But I will love them, but I may not like them. And I think that's very important and why we can continue to grow wisdom for Dr. King, because I think Dr. King wrote quite a great map for all of us living within this time right now. But loving your enemy sounds saintly, but doing it is very, very hard reality. To me, it is with the very essence of taking up one's cross. It is the very essence of Christ on the cross yelling out, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." This is the dark staircase that MLK spoke of, that we walk up a staircase and we can't see the next step, and all we can do is put our foot out. We don't know what's coming. We don't want what's coming from day to day. Every minute I think, well, it can't get any weirder, and then something comes up, it gets weirder. I mean, what's happening in Gaza right now, I'm just beyond, my brain almost can't comprehend what they're trying to do in Gaza right now. Folks, we are in a strange time in history. We are in a strange time for this country and a strange time for this world. And I hope grace and mercy and nonviolence and these words today will encourage you to continue on, and not passivity, but continue on with the hard work of disagreeing well and working for change and working for all of humanity. Because I'll tell you what, uncertainty feels like hell. I don't like it. I don't like living in uncertain times, and that's where we're at. And so we're going to need each other. You know, one of the things that surprises me so much on social media is even encouraging this stuff. I get such pushback, and I understand it, but sometimes the pushback is even cruel. Like your own people are even cruel about it, and so they're so angry at the other people that they take the anger out on you. And it's like you feel like, sometimes I feel like a man without any friends. A man, you know, like I'm just on an island, like, oh, what am I? Am I just screaming out into the darkness? You know, the friendly fire hurts the worst. But I grew up in the church, you know, and as my mom used to say, the church is the only army that kills its wounded. Now I'm starting to find out it's the only army that just kills its own soldiers as well, not even its wounded. But let us really be the change. You know, you hear that the Gandhi quote, "Be the change that you want to see in the world." I don't even know if it's Gandhi, but be the change. But let's really be the change if we can. And this isn't going to be easy, folks. This is not overnight. This is progress, not perfection. We're going to require quite a bit of patience, and it's really going to require a lot of us learning to work together. Hopefully some of the different denominations who feel this way will start to be a little easy on their rules and start to be a little bit more integrated with other denominations and other people who might have a little bit of differences and nuances within their own belief system. Let us start this hard work speaking truth and to have power. Speaking truth to power, speaking truth and love to power. Let us start the hard work by speaking truth to love, with love and power, to power, because I think that's the only way we're going to do it. And I will say this, and you can be mad at me all day and you can disagree with me all day, but I really do believe that Bishop Budd did speak truth to power with love. And I want to say one more time to my LGBTQ friends, is when times like this come and your equality and your rights are threatened, revolution is there for you and with you. And I know we're all different. You can't just say all LGBTQ folks are the same. It's not. So some of us disagree and some of us will agree in different ways and different ideas, but we want to, I want to say that this is a community. You're welcome. We're welcome to disagree. We're welcome to grow together. I'm always open to learning something new and admitting that I'm wrong. I might not like to hear it right off the bat, but I'm willing to take that journey as well. I don't think any of us, oh gosh, what did I do? We don't want to hurt. I've never sent out with the intentions to hurt people. So I just want to remind you all that we're here for you. And for any of our folks who might be immigrants or even, not citizens and are very afraid or have afraid families, we're also here for you. We love you. And feel free to reach out on, it's the easiest, best way to get me is just by direct messaging me on Instagram, but you can also do it on Facebook. I'm trying to get better with that as well. or here as well. We're here from even some of the disagreements I had last week. I told people, can we just talk on the phone? And I got on, so I did a FaceTime with the guy who we were having this huge. We got on and did a 30-minute FaceTime and just talked it out, and realized we weren't going to agree, but we could still love each other, and that's the beginning. That's where we had to start. And he sent me some things that I wasn't great, and I said, hey, this is kind of not where I feel I'm at right now. Could you be a little more patient with me? And I'm not really ready to have this conversation. Can we just work on being friends right now? And he agreed. So yeah, there's that. I try to really practice what I preach. I don't want you to think I'm just sitting here in front of my phone and trying to give you guys impossible tasks and ideas. I am working this out and hope that we can figure out a way to organize a little bit better and do this together. And I'm excited with my friend Brian Yerborough from Houston, who's working with me. We've got some ideas, and I think we're going to meet together in person and figure this out. Love and grace, folks. Angel, I'm praying for you and those folks who are going through hell right now. And hey, just a reminder, the only way this thing continues to go is by your support. I would love to be able to do this full time so we could become more organized and do more. And you can help support our work at going to revolutionchurch.com. The support's up front. We have PayPal and Venmo. It's tax deductible. We really do survive on our very minimum budget. And we hope that we can at least meet that minimum budget. So I can do this and less painting and continue to do this work of, I don't even know what to call it anymore, just human rights, human justice, human love, human grace. Thank you all so much. Peace. Let's love each other, and let's work. Let's do the hard work.